You are standing in a courtyard in Constantinia, and you are wearing the clothes you were taken in. You don't know the language being spoken around you. You don't know what the man with the writing tablet is deciding when he looks at you. You don't know that the boy standing 3 feet to your left will, in 22 years, govern a province larger than England. You know the stone under your feet. You know that someone is about to hand you different clothes, and that the clothes you are wearing now will not be given back. This script covers 6 levels of the Ottoman hierarchy, from the Devshirme child delivered to the palace with nothing to the Sultan who owns an empire and cannot leave it. You will move through the novice, the janissary, the provincial governor, the grand vizier, and the man who sits above all of them. And at every level, you will see exactly what you hold and exactly what holds you. The Ottoman Empire ran this calculation with a precision no other civilization attempted. That calculation begins the moment a boy arrives in a courtyard and someone points him in a direction he did not choose. If this kind of history is what you come here for, subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a full series on the empires that shaped the world, and this one goes deep. The Ottoman system was not a hierarchy that allowed talented men to rise. It was a machine that converted dispossession into administration, that took boys with nothing and built them, deliberately and systematically, into the instruments of state power. 6 levels, each one a different answer to the same question. Each one a different thing that gets taken in exchange for the thing that gets given. The Devshirme levy collected approximately 1 boy from every 40 Christian households in the Balkans on a rolling cycle. Those boys were legally classified as property of the Ottoman state. Some of them ended up running it. That is where this starts. The boy pointing happened the moment the clothes changed, not when you arrived, not when your name was written down in a script you couldn't read. The moment the official lifted his hand and gestured left or right, that was the calculation completing its first step. Roughly 1 in every 5 boys sorted in that courtyard was directed toward the Enderun Mekteb, the palace school inside Topkapi's 3rd and 4th courtyards. The rest went to the Assimi Oglen barracks for military preparation. Nobody explained the criteria, nobody needed to. You are in the Enderun now. The year is somewhere between 1450 and 1550, the height of what Ottoman administrators would later call the classical period. The building you sleep in is called a kouch, a long dormitory that holds 40 boys on raised platforms along 2 walls, each platform separated from the next by a low wooden partition that gives the illusion of privacy and provides none. You have been here 3 months. You sleep in the same position as the boy beside you, because the platform is exactly wide enough for one body lying straight. The curriculum runs 14 years for the slowest students, 3 for the fastest, and the officials who decide which you are write their evaluations in a ledger that you will never see. Ottoman Turkish first, spoken before it is written, corrected before it is praised. Then Arabic, because the Quran is in Arabic, and a man who governs in the Sultan's name must be able to read the law of God without an interpreter. Then Persian, because the empire's literary culture runs through Persian poetry the way European culture runs through Latin, and a man without Persian is a man without refinement, which is a man the Sultan cannot use at court. Horsemanship, archery, wrestling, music, specifically the oud, the long-necked lute that Ottoman court culture considered the instrument of educated men, theology, mathematics, the intricacies of court protocol so elaborate that a wrong step in the Sultan's presence was not an embarrassment but a classification. This boy has not yet become what we need him to be. What you hold at this level is the education. That is not a small thing. The boys in the coach beside you are receiving instruction that most sons of European kings will never access. A Venetian nobleman learning Latin grammar in 1490 would not recognize the intellectual scope of what is being handed to you. The Ottoman Palace School in this period is, by any honest measure, the finest educational institution in the world for the training of administrators. You know this. In the abstract way, you know things you were told rather than things you discovered. What holds you is the door. The coach locks at night. Not metaphorically. A wooden bar drops across the entrance, and the official who drops it takes the key with him when he walks away, and you lie in the dark, listening to 39 other boys breathe, and you do not speak, because speaking after lights out is recorded. The official who records it is sleeping in a room at the end of the corridor, and the report he writes tomorrow will be read by a man whose name you do not know, who will write a second report, which will go into the ledger you will never see. The specific humiliation of this education is linguistic. 3 years in, your Ottoman Turkish has lost most of its Balkan accent. 5 years in, it is fluent enough that you correct yourself before an instructor can correct you. 7 years in, you dream in Ottoman Turkish. And somewhere between the 7th and the 9th year, you reach for a word in the language you arrived with. The language your mother spoke, the language of the prayers you were taught before you were converted, the language of the village whose name is written in the intake ledger as your place of origin, and the word is not there, not suppressed, not hidden, gone. The palace school did not take it from you through cruelty, it crowded it out. You were given something better, and the thing that was better left no room for the thing that was first. You are standing before an instructor in the fourth courtyard. It is early morning before the first prayer. You are reciting a ghazal by the 15th century Persian poet Jami. 14 couplets from memory, the meter precise, the pronunciation clean. The instructor does not react until you finish. Then he makes a mark in his ledger. You do not know if the mark is favorable. You will not ask. What you own at this moment is perfect pronunciation and no private self to return to at the end of the day. The boy from the Balkans who arrived in a courtyard with one set of clothes has been replaced carefully and systematically by something the empire can use. The replacement is not finished, but it is far enough along that the original is no longer recoverable. What comes next is the question of what the empire does with what it has built. The boys who leave the Enderan go in two directions again, into the administrative apparatus of the palace itself, or outward into the military and provincial structure. The ones who go outward carry the empire's logic in their bodies, like a language they cannot stop speaking. The ones who stay carry it in a different way. Both of them are about to discover that being built for a system and being free inside it are not the same thing, and that the gap between those two states is exactly where the next 30 years of your life will be spent. The ones who go outward carry the empire's logic in their bodies like a language they cannot stop speaking. The ones who stay carry it in a different way. Both of them are about to discover that being built for a system and being free inside it are not the same thing. The ones who go outward end up here. You're standing in a field outside a city whose name you were given this morning, and the city's walls are the only thing between you and the next thing you will be ordered to do. The year is somewhere in the late 15th century, and you are a janissary, Yenicheri, the new force, and the iron cauldron at the center of your camp has been burning since before dawn. The Janissary Corps was not an army in the sense that European armies of this period were armies. A French nobleman raised a force from his lands, fed it from his estates, led it because of his blood. The Janissaries were different in every particular. They were salaried, paid quarterly from the imperial treasury in cash, a system so novel in the 1400s that foreign observers wrote home about it the way later generations wrote about gunpowder. They were permanent. They did not disband after a campaign and return to farms. They lived in the Odalar, the barracks, in Istanbul and in garrison cities across the empire, in units of between 10 and 50 men, and they ate every meal together from a shared cauldron called the kazan. The kazan was not a metaphor, it was the literal center of unit identity. A Janissary's regiment was identified not by a flag or coat of arms, but by the shape of its soup ladle, cast in iron, hung above the cauldron. To belong to the corps was to eat from that pot. To be expelled from the corps was to have your ladle broken in front of the unit. And to overturn the kazan, to tip it into the mud in front of the officers, was the signal for mutiny. Sultans understood what the cauldron meant. Several of them died because they forgot. What you own at this level is your weapon, your uniform, and your place on the pay register. That is the complete inventory. No land, no house, no wife until later in your career. And even then, only with permission from your commanding off. You cannot run a business. You cannot accumulate property in the way that a free man accumulates property, incrementally across a lifetime, for heirs you intend to leave it to. The barracks is your household. The regiment is your family. The men who ate from the same cauldron as you this morning are the closest thing to kin that the empire allows you to have. What holds you is the same logic that held you in the Kosh, only larger and louder. In the Enderun, the door locked at night. Here, the borders of the empire lock around you. You move when the campaign order comes. You stop when the campaign order stops. You go to Hungary or Persia or the Anatolian highlands because a man in Istanbul looked at a map and wrote a directive, and that directive traveled down through the divan to the corps commanders, to the Eata of your orta, your regiment, and arrived as a spoken order on the morning you broke camp. You did not weigh it. You did not have the standing to weigh it. You moved. Here is what the cauldron actually bought you. The Janissaries adopted firearms, Tufik, the matchlock musket, approximately 2 decades before most European infantry forces integrated them as a primary weapon. At the Battle of Mohacs in 1526, Ottoman Janissary infantry carrying firearms faced Hungarian knights in plate armor on horseback, and the knights ceased to exist as a fighting force in under 2 hours. A Hungarian force of around 25,000 men was destroyed by an Ottoman army in which the Janissary Corps functioned as the disciplined corps. The Hungarian king, Louis II, drowned in a marsh retreating from the field. The Janissaries were not surprised by this outcome. It was the expected result of what happens when a professional standing force with standardized weapons and coordinated volley drill meets a feudal levy in open terrain. They had run this calculation before. You are the most effective soldier in the known world in the 1500s. The Venetian ambassador Marino Sanudo wrote in 1502 that the Ottoman infantry was unlike anything fielded by a Christian prince, drilled, paid, and committed to the fight in a way that rendered European comparisons meaningless. You do not know Sanudo wrote this. It would not matter to you if you did. What matters is the man to your left and the man to your right, and the cauldron that will be burning when you return. What you do not own is the decision to return. That belongs to someone else. Someone who sits in a building you have never entered, behind a courtyard you have never crossed, making decisions about provinces and frontiers and the movement of forces that include your body as one unit among many thousands. That man is the next thing this script is about. You are standing at a window in Topkapi. Not the windows that face the Bosphorus, where the water catches the light in the early morning and the ships move through it like punctuation. The window you're standing at faces inward, into the third courtyard, the one below. A boy has just arrived. You can see him from here. He's wearing the clothes he was taken in. He is standing on the same stone you stood on. You know it is the same stone because stone does not change in 40 years, and you have not forgotten the texture of it under your feet, which is the only thing you remember clearly from that morning, because everything else has been replaced. His name has not been written down yet. His direction has not been decided yet. He does not know that the official standing 3 feet to his left was himself standing in this same courtyard 30 years before him, for the same reason, wearing the same expression of controlled stillness that boys learn when they understand that reaction is information they cannot afford to give away for free. What you own at this level is everything: the treasury, the army, the fleet, the legal apparatus of a civilization stretching from the Sahara to the Danube. Every pasha governing every province governs in your name. Every janissary who moves at a campaign order moves because the order traces back, through every intermediate hand it passed through, to you. The silk on your caftan was woven by artisans whose guild answered to your court. The food on your table was tasted by a man whose only function was to die before you did, if something was wrong with it. What holds you is all of it. You cannot leave, not the palace. Sultans did leave the palace for campaigns, for processions, for the Friday prayer at the mosque the city built to carry your name into the future. But you cannot leave the position. There is no outside of it. The janissary can be expelled from the corps and still exist as a man. The pasha can be removed from his province and still be someone. The Grand Vizier, 53 men held that office in the century and a half after the conquest of Constantinople, and the ones who were dismissed were the lucky ones, and even the lucky ones were stripped of the seal before they had finished understanding they were being dismissed. But you cannot be stripped of this. The empire and your existence are the same noun. The day they are separated is the day one of them ends, and it will not be the empire. The Valid Sultan, your mother, if she's still living, is the most powerful woman in the known world. She was herself a slave when she arrived here. The concubines who gave you your children are legally property. The men who guard your innermost chambers, the Has Oda, are cool. State slaves trained from boyhood to serve at the center of the center. The closest human beings to you, in physical proximity and daily access, in knowledge of your actual self rather than your symbolic function, are people the law classifies as owned. The empire's most intimate relationships are property relationships, and you are at the middle of it, and you are yourself, in the Ottoman political theology that legitimizes every order you have ever issued. A slave of God, kul of Allah, accountable to divine law for every decision you make over the lives of tens of millions, with no intermediary to absorb the accounting. The boy in the courtyard below does not know you're watching. He does not know that the machine he's about to enter has an apex, and that the apex is a room, and that the room is this one, and that the man standing in it has not chosen where to stand this morning any more than the boy below has chosen which courtyard to stand in. The boy arrived here because a levy took him from a village. You arrived here because a dynasty placed you at the end of a line of succession, and the line ended with you, and the empire needed a sultan, and you were the available candidate. And available candidates in this system do not decline. You were the boy who lost his first language between the 7th and the 9th year of training when Ottoman Turkish crowded out the thing that came before it. You remember the moment, not the specific word that disappeared, but the reaching for it and finding nothing. What you did not know then was that the language was only the first thing. The courtyard was the second. The coach door at night was the third. Each rank gave you something and took something structurally larger, and the taking was never announced, never formalized, never explained. You were handed better clothes each time. You were not told what the clothes cost. The boy below will be sorted in the next few minutes. Someone will point him left or right, and the direction he goes will determine 30 years of his life with a precision he cannot imagine, while he is standing in the courtyard, wondering what the man with the writing tablet is deciding. If he goes left, he will drill with weapons in the Assemi-Oghlan barracks and eat from a cauldron and become part of a force that the Venetian ambassador wrote home about, because there was no European comparison that made sense. If he goes right, he will sleep in a kosh with 39 other boys and recite Persian poetry before dawn until his accent is gone and his pronunciation is clean. The person who arrived in this courtyard is no longer the person answering the instructor's questions. Either way, he will be built into something the empire can use. Either way, the building will be indistinguishable from the thing itself by the time it is complete. Either way, he will spend the rest of his life carrying the Empire's logic in his body the way a language carries a civilization. Not as a choice, not as a belief, but as the structure through which all choices and beliefs must pass. You watch him from the window, you do not go down. The Ottoman system was not a path from nothing to everything. It was a demonstration conducted across 600 years and tens of thousands of individual lives that nothing and everything are the same constraint from different altitudes. The boy in the courtyard holds nothing and cannot move in any direction he chooses. The man at the window holds everything and cannot move at all. Between them, across every level this script has walked through, the distance is not freedom. It is only elevation. The view changes, the walls do not.